3 Spine-Chilling True Nightmares Haunting Tales Exposed EP 184, Discover Unexplained Terrors. In the quiet suburb of Willow Creek, a dark cloud loomed just beyond the well-manicured lawns. Karen, a nurse, often worked the night shifts, leaving her alone with her thoughts consumed by the whispers of fear now echoing through her home. Strange noises sent her heart racing in the dead of night, shadows flickered past the fence, and her teenage son, Jake, had grown distant, almost secretive. Each night she returned to the warmth of their cozy home only to find it chilled by a lurking horror. "Mom, did you hear that?" Jake's voice trembled, echoing through the silence of their dim-lit living room. It felt like a joke, but Karen saw the fear in his eyes. "Someone's outside. I saw them." The word struck her like ice, wrapping around her heart. Goosebumps rose on her skin, and she turned, scanning the narrow window, convinced she'd see a figure lurking, peering inside with malicious intent. But there was nothing, only the stillness of night, heavy and suffocating. As days passed, Karen's anxiety spiraled like a descent into darkness. She'd scoffed at the stories her coworkers would tell, legends of an old abandoned school at the town's edge, a site where a tragic incident had unfolded years ago, leaving scars on the community's soul. But now, a chilling urge drove her to investigate. She felt something lingering, watching her every move. Yet when she approached the local authorities seeking help, they dismissed her fears, chalking them up to the paranoia of a tired mother. The weight of their indifference fueled her nightmares until an emergency text from Jake sent a knife of pure panic through her heart. "Mom, I'm at the old school. I think something is watching me." Panic twisted her stomach as she raced out the door, the cool night air biting at her skin. What was he doing there? The school loomed before her like a toothy monstrosity, jagged and dark, a predator waiting to devour. The air was thick with unease, every creak and snap in the silence magnifying her dread. Pushing through the old doors, the musty scent of forgotten memories wafted over her, mingling with staleness that reeked of fear. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With each step deeper into the building, Karen felt the chill wrapping around her like a suffocating blanket. Echoes of her heartbeat pulsed in her ears as she navigated the broken hallways. Memories seeped through the rotten walls, tales of tragedy whispering and swirling around her, lingering like smoke. The air turned electric, thick with the weight of betrayal lingering like a specter, and she stumbled, nearly losing her grip on reality. Shadows danced near her peripheral vision, taunting her sense of safety. When she heard a whisper, the words coiling around her ear sent a bolt of icy terror through her veins. "I'm watching you." Fear enveloped her as she realized this community was not what it seemed. The very people she once trusted now felt like puppets, strings danced by secrets and darkness. With every moment, she stood closer to unraveling a hidden truth that had been buried beneath layers of smiles and small-town pleasantries. Just as she reached for the doorknob to what might hold the answers, her phone buzzed again. Another message. A rush of dread filled her as she read it. "I can see you." The voice of that unseen neighbor whispered again, chilling her to the bone. Would she find Jake before it was too late? Or was she, too, destined to simply become part of the town's haunted history? Karen's heart pounded like a drum, each beat echoing her growing terror. She could still hear that whisper in her mind, twisting her resolve. "I can see you." Who was watching her? She clenched her phone tightly, the cool metal grounding her in that moment, but dread dug its icy fingers into her spine. The door creaked ominously as she pushed it open, revealing an empty classroom ahead, moonlight spilling through the cracked windows like ghostly fingers reaching into the darkness. Desks lay scattered, remnants of lives interrupted by horror. A thick layer of dust coated everything, but the air was heavier, it felt alive with anticipation. "Jake!" she called, her voice breaking. No response. Only silence met her desperate plea. She turned to her left, glancing into the hallway, shadows fringed at the edges of her vision. They beckoned her deeper into the building, twisting and curling around her like a living nightmare. Each step felt like an act of defiance against an unseen force, demanding she turn back. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed from the storage room down the hall. It jolted her forward, adrenaline surging through her legs as she rushed toward the sound. Could it be Jake? Her instincts screamed that she needed to protect him. Every instinct urged her to flee, yet the maternal drive tugged her closer. As she approached the door, it swung open unexpectedly, filling the corridor with a gust of stale air. Heart racing, she peered inside, her breath trembling in her throat. The room was empty, an eerie darkness clung to the corners, and yet she felt it, the unmistakable sensation of being watched. She held her breath, straining to hear any hint of Jake's voice. Then, faintly, she heard it. A whimper. "Jake?" she whispered, her voice trembling with urgency. The whimper grew louder, more defined. Mom, relief flooded through her, but it was quickly dashed by the pit of fear that twisted in her stomach. It was coming from behind a stack of old boxes in the far corner. She edged closer, every step a battle between hope and dread. What if it wasn't him? "Jake, I'm here. I'm coming." She didn't recognize her own voice, it quavered with desperation, teetering on the edge of hysteria. "Help me!" It was now a plea that chilled her to the bone. Karen reached the boxes and pushed them aside, exposing a narrow, dark passageway. Whatever lay beyond felt as though it were alive, pulsating with a sinister energy. Her instincts screamed to run, to flee while she still could, but her heart weighed her down. A deep chill swept through the air, and she felt the low murmur of a voice, more threatening than before. "You shouldn't have come here." A sense of dread washed over her as the whisper grew louder, closer. She could almost see the shape of something materializing in the shadows. Faces flitted briefly in the darkness, specters from the school's tragic past. "No!" she gasped, staggering backward. She felt their pain, their anger swirling around her, suffocating her will to escape. "Mom!" Jake's voice pierced through the chaos, wrestling for her attention as the specter loomed closer, its form now partially visible, features contorted in agony. She had to make a choice: search for Jake or confront this evil that had begun to consume her. The world around her grew darker, time stretching painfully as her instincts battled against each other. With a cry, she lunged into the passageway, gripping a flashlight she found among the debris, casting a beam into the suffocating darkness. "Jake!" she yelled again, her voice breaking through the oppressive silence. Would she find him before the shadows swallowed them both? Or would she become yet another chapter in the town's haunting history? The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of voices rising in a desperate symphony as she took another step forward. But what awaited her at the end of that passage? The darkness enveloped Karen as she stepped further into the passageway, her flashlight flickering wildly. Each pulse of light revealed mere glimpses of peeling wallpaper and cobwebs that hung like ghastly reminders of neglect. The air thickened, suffocating her senses with an oppressive weight. "Jake!" she called out again, her voice quivering, but the only response was the echo of her own desperation bouncing back at her. She pressed on, the cold dampness of the walls seeping through her clothes, creeping into her bones. Footsteps echoed behind her, though she dared not turn her head to look. Each step was a gamble. Would the flashlight guide her to her son, or would it lead her deeper into a nightmare? "Mom! Help me!" Jake's voice sliced through the heavy silence, sharper than before, filled with more urgency. It directed her, pulling her toward a room at the end of the passageway. The darkness seemed to quiver around her, shadows lengthening and inching closer. With her heart in her throat, she veered toward the sound, practically sprinting now. Each tremor of dread threatened to stop her in her tracks, urging her to retreat to safety. But the thought of Jake kept her moving, pushing past the boundaries of sanity. suddenly, she burst through a door that had somehow stood closed, revealing a small, dimly lit room cluttered with broken chairs and rusted remnants of a bygone era. The air smelled stale, reminiscent of something long buried. In the corner, her son huddled, his back to her. Relief and panic surged through her. He was here. "Jake!" she breathed, rushing forward. He turned slowly, his face pale and gaunt, haunted eyes wide and glassy, reflecting something far more terrifying than simple fear. "Mom," he whispered, and the room seemed to tremble. Then, as she knelt beside him, that chilling whisper echoed again, "You shouldn't have come here." The voice was different now, deeper, resonating through the walls as though it had been waiting for her arrival. The shadows twisted violently around them, writhing like angry serpents hungry for warmth. "Get up, Jake. We have to go." She reached for him, but he flinched away, his expression shifting into one of terror. "No. Don't touch me. Mom, don't!" he cried, pointing behind her. The breath caught in her throat as she turned. The specter from before was standing there, fully formed, a grotesque parody of a human, eyes hollow and devoid of life. It loomed over her, stretching impossibly tall, its twisted mouth splitting into a malevolent grin. "I've been waiting," it rasped, each word clawing at her sanity. "Leave us alone!" she shouted, adrenaline surging. She grabbed Jake's arm, and together they scrambled to their feet, backing away toward the door. The specter took a step forward, and with it, the temperatures dropped, frost forming on the walls. "Mom, we have to run!" Jake shouted, pulling her back. Overcome by instinct, she yanked him, and they bolted through the door. The whispers shrieked in anger behind them, claws of shadow reaching out, clawing for their heels. As they burst into the hallway, they raced back the way they came, the echoes of the specter's voice trailing behind them. "You can't escape. I know your fears." But the shadows persisted, swarming around them, nearly dragging them back. She squeezed Jake's hand tighter, fear electrifying their course. Then, out of nowhere, she stumbled upon a different door marked with a faded sign, "Exit." Her heart sank and soared simultaneously. "This way!" she cried, barreling toward it. Would they make it? Or would the darkness overtake them just as before? She reached for the handle, anticipation electrifying the air around her. Would the exit lead them to safety or into an even darker fate? There was no time to ponder. She flung the door open, praying for a way out, but what lay beyond could change everything. Beyond the door, Karen found herself in a narrow staircase spiraling both upward and downward, the air thick with an unnatural chill. The light from her flashlight flickered again, and she hesitated for a heartbeat, the flickering illuminating a split in the stairs, one descending into more darkness and the other leading up into a faint glow. "Mom, which way?" Jake's voice trembled, mirroring her own frantic pulse. She felt the pull of fear gnawing at her gut, its icy claws reminding her of the specter still prowling behind them. "Up," she decided, urgency spilling out of her. "We've got to get out of here." She didn't look back. They both hurried upward, every step muffled in silence. The faint light grew brighter, a soft glow pushing against the encompassing darkness. As they climbed, she heard whispers, soft, seductive. The voices entwined in her mind, tugging at her resolve. "Help us, Karen," they implored. She couldn't tell where they were coming from or who was speaking, but she pressed her hands to her ears, fighting against the phantoms of despair. "Mom, please," Jake pleaded. "What do they want?" "I don't know, honey. Just keep going." With renewed determination, they reached a door at the top. She turned the handle, but it resisted, refusing to budge. Panic surged. They could hear a low, rumbling growl rising from the abyss of the staircase beneath them as shadows began to flow upward like a living tide. "Jake, help me!" Karen shouted, pushing against the door with all her might. Jake came up beside her, throwing his weight into it. The door creaked, groaning in protest, but then it opened slowly, revealing a massive room illuminated by faint, flickering lights. They stumbled inside, gasping, and the door slammed shut behind them with a thunderous crash. Karen spun around, heart racing, only to find Jake standing frozen, staring in horror at something across the room. "Jake, what is it?" Her voice cracked as she approached him slowly. Amidst rows of old chairs and broken furniture stood ghostly figures, their features twisted in agony, their mouths opening in silent screams. They wore expressions of despair, eyes vacant, locked in an eternal torment, as though the room itself was a prison of suffering. "Mom, they look like..." Jake's words faltered, his eyes wide in shock. "They look like the people who went missing around here," she whispered, a chill racing down her spine. The figures began to sway, their movements a dance of desperation. Karen reached for Jake, and as soon as she touched him, the ghostly figures turned their attention toward them. The air thickened, the room pulsating with malevolence. A low wail filled the space, echoing off the walls. "Leave this place!" One ghost hissed, its voice barely above a whisper yet thunderous in its intent. "Turn back!" A large shadow emerged in the center, coaxing forth the very darkness they had fled from. It twisted into a familiar figure, grotesquely contorting itself until it bore the visage of the specter from the hallway. "You should have stayed away," it rasped, voice dripping with venom. Karen's blood ran cold, dread wrapping around her heart. They had stumbled into a trap, a sanctuary of lost souls and utter darkness. "Run, Mom!" Jake screamed, breaking her trance. But where would they run? The specter closed in, shadows swirling beneath its feet, threatening to swallow them alive. "Mom!" Jake pulled at her arm, his voice cutting through the chaos. As the darkness lunged forth, Karen faced a choice: confront the specter and its haunted captive souls, or search desperately for a way out amidst the chaos. And then, in the heartbeat before the darkness enveloped them, she saw something glinting in the corner of the room, an old-fashioned key, glimmering with a strange light beneath the throes of despair. But the specter's voice laughed triumphantly. "Will you save him, or will you save yourself?" With time running out, Karen had to decide, and the fate of them all hung in the balance. The air crackled with tension as Karen stood frozen, her heartbeat muffling the wails of the tortured souls surrounding her. Jake's grip tightened on her arm, icy fear rippling between them. The specter loomed closer, its tendrils of shadow reaching for them, grasping at the very essence of their life force. "Mom, please! Not that thing! We need to go!" His words came out in gasps, panic etching lines across his young face. Karen's mind raced, weighing every possible outcome. Save Jake or herself? That key, catching the faint light, gleamed with an almost entrancing promise. Could it be their escape? Or was it just another illusion summoned by the specter to dwell further into despair? "Hold on tight!" She barked suddenly, an instinctive decision propelling her. She grabbed Jake's hand and sprinted toward the key, every footfall weighed down by dread, the specter's cold laughter echoing behind them like a malevolent whisper. "Run faster!" Jake cried, and they dashed past the swaying figures. The room felt alive, a heartbeat of darkness pulsating with ancient anguish. A ghost reached for her, fingers clawing through the air, just brushing against her jacket. Leave this place," it moaned, a soft, rusted whisper that pierced her. Karen fought the urge to look back, focusing instead on the key. The moment she reached it, her fingers curled around its cool, metallic form. "What now?" she shouted, heart racing. "I don't know." Jake's eyes were wide, shimmering with terror. Finally glancing back, she saw the specter hovering before them, face twisted in grotesque delight, shadow creeping closer. It pointed an elongated finger, its eyes burning with black flames. "You cannot escape!" It shrieked, and the walls around Karen and Jake seemed to pulse, shifting under the weight of despair. "No! We have to!" Karen yelled, her mind racing. She kissed the key, an absurd act of hope, then glanced around. There had to be a door, something, an escape, if only she could see through the growing fog of anxiety. "Mom!" Jake pulled her toward one wall, shadowed and damp. Bracing herself, Karen approached it. Cradling the cold key, she shoved it into the first lock she could find. The mechanism caught but didn't turn. The specter's breath, a swirling chill, clawed at her neck. "Your bravery will be your end," it howled. Her pulse raced. "Not today." With fiery determination, she pulled the key out and pressed it into another lock, the metal scraping against the rust. The ghostly forms around them seemed to close in, their cries overlapping, begging for release or retribution. "Mom, it's coming. We have to hurry." Jake's voice shook with urgency. One more time she panted, dread contorting her stomach. She slid the key into the second lock and twisted with all her strength. With an ear-splitting clang, the door shattered forward, spilling out dizzying light. "Go!" She pushed Jake with every ounce of desperation. He leaped into the brilliant glow. But just as she followed, an icy hand clamped around her wrist. Breath caught in her throat, she turned. The specter's leering face swam before her, its smile wide and predatory. "Where do you think you're going?" it hissed, pulling her back into the shadows. "Jake!" Karen screamed, panic exploding in her chest. She struggled against the grip, the specter's cold fingers tightening like a vice. "Let go of her." Jake's cries became a frantic echo as the light behind him flickered, threatening to extinguish. Desperation surged, barreling into Karen's heart. The key, could it save her? With all her might, she yanked it free from the specter's grasp, raised it high, feeling the pulse of energy within, but then she remembered the whispers from before, the tortured souls, the hidden truth behind their torment. What if saving herself meant unleashing something worse? "Mom!" Jake's voice was a lifeline amid the chaos, urging her back toward the light. Would she dare to confront this darkness, or make a deal with the ghostly wretch to save her son? Time was running out. In that critical moment, the environment around Karen shifted again. The ghosts surged towards the specter, their anguished faces twisting with fury. "Choose." The specter growled, angry shadows swirling around its form as the room began to tremble. As Jake's desperate eyes locked onto hers, she knew she was out of time. Would she risk everything to save her child or fall prey to the darkness herself? The decision loomed heavy, and in this breath of uncertainty, the key glimmered, waiting. What lay beyond the door was no longer clear, and then, deep in the shadows, a new sound emerged, a distant, echoing laughter, one that promised more horrors to come. The specter's grip was like ice, and Karen's heart thundered in her chest. It felt like the shadows themselves were alive, twisting and swirling as if anticipating her next move. Jake's cries echoed in her ears, drowning out the specter's rasping laughter. "Choose, woman." The specter snarled, teeth glinting in the dim light, warped features a grotesque mask of malice. Shadows rippled around its form, thickening, pulsating. She felt their weight, there was no escape without making a fatal choice. "Let go of me." She gasped, wrenching her arm, but the grip only tightened, sending shivers down her spine. She could see the swirling faces of the long-dead souls behind the specter, their eyes wide with anguish, lips moving in muted pleas for help or maybe for revenge. "Your son," the specter hissed, twisting its finger in the air as if weaving a monstrous spell. "Your love for him is your curse. You want to save him? What will you sacrifice?" The question hung in the air, heavy with dread. Karen's mind raced, cold tendrils of fear creeping in. What would she give to save her son? Her past flashed before her, the moments of laughter, the warmth of his small hands in hers. The specter's smile widened, sensing her hesitation. "Ah, you hesitate. You value your own life more than his, do you not? But choose wisely. Call for him, and he may never return." "No!" she cried out, heart pounding. For a moment, She thought about calling to Jake, but the fear flooded her. What if that sealed his fate? Suddenly, a burst of strength surged through her. She swung the key like a weapon, desperation fueling her courage. You won't take him. I'd rather die than lose him to you. The specter shrieked, a cry of rage echoing off the walls, discordant and chilling. The shadows around them flickered, and for a moment, Karen felt the encroaching darkness retreat. Join me. It howled. Together, we can bring an end to all suffering. Behind her, she heard Jake whimper. The light beyond the door quivered, dimming under the weight of those trapped souls. Panic surged through her. She couldn't let the specter win. It was trying to twist her love into a weapon against her. Looks like you're not the only one with the power to choose. She roared, slamming the key back into the lock. This time, she felt the surge of energy course through her. With a flick, the key clicked, and an ear-splitting crack reverberated through the air. The door flew open wider, blinding light flooding the space. She thrust herself forward, wrenching herself free from the specter's grip. Go, Jake! She screamed, motioning toward the luminous opening. She fought against the otherworldly chill that wrapped tightly around her, pushing towards the brightness. Shadows crashed against her, shrieking in anguish as she forced her way through, but just before she made it, the specter lunged, snatching at her leg with icy fingers, dragging her back. You will never escape. You will join them. It roared, pain and fury amalgamated in its voice. With every ounce of strength still in her, she kicked at the specter, her foot colliding with where its torso should have been. The shadows writhed, and for just a fleeting moment, everything stilled, the darkness recoiling. Then, Jake burst back into her view, darting forward, his tiny hands reaching for her. Mom! Don't leave me! The sight of him reignited the fire inside her. I'll never leave you! She bellowed, yanking free from the specter just as it howled. A last grasp of desperation, she launched herself toward Jake, the two colliding in the overwhelming light. The door slammed shut behind them, but she could feel the specter's spiteful laughter, distant yet potent. Remember, Karen, there are worse things than death. I will find you again. As the warmth of the light enveloped her, a horrific thought surfaced. They had escaped the specter, but at what cost? What price for survival would continue to haunt them? They stumbled out into a familiar corridor, but everything felt wrong. The walls pulsated, whispering secrets lost in the shadows of their past, and as they turned a corner, Karen's breath caught. A mirror stood against the wall, reflecting not just themselves, but the twisted visage of the specter grinning in malevolent triumph. Its voice echoed in their minds, increasing in intensity, reminding them, warning them. Your nightmares have only just begun. Fear pooled in Karen's gut, realizing their escape was just the beginning. What awaited them outside this realm? Maybe the key would lead them back. Or worse, into the abyss. The mirror loomed larger than life, an ominous portal reflecting not only the faces of mother and son, but also the dark energy swirling around them. Karen's heart raced as she instinctively stepped back, pulling Jake closer to her. Shadows flickered and danced in the reflection, casting eerie shapes that seemed to extend far beyond the glass. Mom, what's that? Jake's voice trembled. He clutched her hand tightly, his small fingers biting into her skin, anchoring her amidst the encroaching dread. Karen's mind raced. It's just a reflection, just a mirror, she whispered, but the words felt hollow. She couldn't shake the sensation that it was a gateway, an invitation to something malevolent. Suddenly, the glass rippled, and from within, the specter's laugh echoed. You think you've escaped? It taunted, its voice reverberating like distant thunder. You've merely entered my realm. The game is far from over. Panic surged through her. We need to go. She commanded, yanking at Jake to turn away from the mirror, but he stood frozen, his eyes wide with horror as he stared at the twisted visage that loomed ever closer. A chill swept over them. The air thickened, suffocating like a heavy fog, and she could feel the shadows reaching for them again. "No! Jake! Don't look!" she yelled, feeling the weight of despair pressing on her chest. With all her strength, she wrenched him away just as fingers of shadow stretched out, brushing against the air where they'd just been standing. The moment of contact sent shivers racing down her spine, and she felt a quickening heartbeat of fear. As they staggered away from the mirror, Karen's breathing became ragged. "We have to keep moving. We can't let it catch us." They rushed down the corridor, but the walls began to close in. The shadows thrummed with malevolence, whispering her name. "Karen, join us forever." Their voices bled together, a haunting cacophony that curled around her mind, pulling at her sanity. "Run!" she urged Jake, who nodded, fear etched on his small face. They sped through the hall, desperate to find an exit, but every door they reached stood locked, taunting them like some cruel trick. With each failed attempt, dread pooled in her gut. "What if we're trapped?" Karen gasped, the words tasting bitter on her tongue. The specter loomed larger in her thoughts, its promise heavy with darkness. Their time was running out. Just then, a flicker caught her eye down a side corridor. A door, old and weathered, appeared almost like a whisper amongst the chaos. "Jake! Over here!" They sprinted towards the door, pushing it open with a force that seemed to defy the shadowy dread. What lay beyond was a stairwell spiraling down into darkness. Cold air rushed up to greet them, an invitation or a trap. "Mom, are you sure?" Jake hesitated, looking into the inky blackness below. "Jake, we have no choice," she urged, glancing back nervously. The laughter of the specter vibrated against the walls, mocking their hesitation. With a deep breath, she grabbed his hand and pulled him down the staircase, the air growing thinner and colder with every step they took. As they descended, the flickering lights above began to sputter, casting erratic shadows that seemed to reach towards them, malicious tendrils of darkness seeking to ensnare them once more. Suddenly, Karen heard a low murmur, a whisper that threaded itself through the darkness. "You could have served me, Karen. A mother's heart is always vulnerable." The specter's voice seemed to echo from everywhere and nowhere all at once. Panic clawed at her throat as she felt the edges of her resolve start to collapse. She couldn't let it take Jake, not now, not ever. "We will find a way out," she cried, determination surging in her veins, even as doubt began to take root. But as they reached the bottom of the stairs, the air grew still. The shadows congealed around them, thickening into an almost palpable force. And then, a single word from the depths sent shivers through her: return. The darkness swallowed them whole, leaving nothing but the echo of their desperate breaths and the promise of more horrors to come. What awaited them in the depths? Could they truly escape the spectre-esque grasp, or had they already sealed their fate? The darkness twisted around them like a living creature, pulsating with menace. Karen strained to catch her breath, her mind battling against the overwhelming sense of dread that enveloped them. Jake trembled beside her, his small frame barely visible in the dim light. "Mom, I can't see," he whimpered, his voice cracking. The air felt harsh and unwelcoming, tugging at the edges of her courage. "Stay close," she instructed, her voice steadier than she felt. "I won't let anything happen to you." They stepped forward, squinting into the void before them. The descent had led them to a vast chamber, walls coated in a slick, inky residue that seemed to absorb light. It was nothing like their home. This place throbbed with dark history, each shadow a witness to despair. No windows, no way out. Jake's whispered realization hung in the air like an omen. A chill ran through them as the whisper of shadows danced in response, echoing Jake's fears. Karen pressed on, her footfalls muffled against the cold stone beneath. Each step felt weighted, as if the ground was intent on anchoring them here. The only sound was a low, drumming heartbeat that seemed to emanate from somewhere deep within the earth. "Mom?" Jake's question cut through the beat of confusion. She turned to face him, eyes wide with anxiety. "Stay close, please," she replied, clutching his hand tighter. In the distance, the dim glow of bioluminescent fungi flickered, drawing them closer like moths to a flame. As they neared, the vibrant glow revealed more lurid details: scratches along the walls, grooves that bore down into the stone, and an overwhelming odor of decay. Suddenly, the glimmer of life around them blinked out, plunging the chamber back into suffocating darkness. Karen felt the air shift, freezing her in frightened stillness. A low hum filled the space, building in intensity, an angry choir suspended just out of reach. Jake gasped, squeezing her hand. "Mom! What is that?" Before she could respond, the shadows enveloped them, coiling around like serpents. The oppressive darkness pressed tighter, drowning out all sound except her own racing heartbeat. "Return!" The voice roared again, reverberating like a thunderclap. "I won tea. We won tea." Karen shouted defiantly, but the darkness roared back, swirling violently. The chamber shifted before her eyes, walls warping as if in response to her defiance. Visions flickered, faces twisted in agony, fingers reaching out, begging for release. "No!" she cried, stumbling backwards. The visions flooded her mind as she fought to separate reality from the nightmare closing in. "Mom!" Jake shrieked, panic piercing through the chaos. In that moment of desperation, she realized the truth: they weren't just being hunted, they were being judged. The specter thrived on their fear, feeding on the very essence of what they valued most: their love for each other. Fighting against the tendrils of shadows, her heart squeezed in terror. "We need to break free, Jake. Remember the mirror. Use your belief. We are more than this darkness." Around them, the shadowy figures recoiled, their shape morphing in response to her words. For an instant, Karen saw the flicker of doubt reflected in the abyss. "Believe, Jake. We can fight," she urged. Jake's trembling voice broke through the suffocating fear. "I believe. We can escape." As their combined will surged, a blinding light burst forth from their clasped hands, illuminating the darkness. The shadows shrieked, shrinking back, and amid the chaos, she spotted a flickering silhouette, an exit. "Run!" Karen shouted, pushing Jake ahead of her, desperation propelling them forward, but the shadows surged again, this time more aggressive, screeching in denial. "Jake! Don't look back!" she cried, willing the light of their hope to guide them. Just as they neared the silhouette, the ground quaked beneath them. A chasm opened wider, threatening to pull them in. They took one final leap toward salvation, and then everything went dark again. What lay waiting on the other side? Had they truly escaped, or was this merely a new beginning for the horror that awaited them? Light returned, then shattered into fragments. Karen and Jake collapsed onto a surface that felt different, harder, colder. They gasped for breath, air flaring into their lungs like icy fire. They were no longer surrounded by darkness. Instead, a harsh, flickering light flooded the room, revealing twisted metal and shattered glass. "Where are we?" Jake whispered, his voice trembling again. Fear brimming behind his eyes, he grasped Karen's arm. I don't know," Karen stammered, rising to her feet. Her heart raced as she scanned the room. They were inside a dilapidated structure, once grand but now decayed, draped like cobwebs over the remnants. Metal beams twisted grotesquely, stretching out like skeletal fingers. She could feel the cold, creeping dread inch closer, lurking behind the veil of chaos. A distant thudding echoed, reverberating in her chest. The shadows stirred at the edges of the flickering light, reminders of what they had just escaped. Each echo sent a spark of panic through her. Had they really escaped? Or was this just another layer of the nightmare? "Mom, please," Jake's voice cracked again, pulling her back from the precipice of her thoughts. "We'll be okay," she assured him, though uncertainty gnawed at her insides. She stepped ahead, dragging Jake with her. They moved deeper into the chaos, surrounded by corridors that branched off like veins in a dying creature. Suddenly, a door ahead creaked open, revealing a room filled with old portraits. Blue and gray shadows flickered across the faces painted on the canvas. Eyes that seemed to follow them. Karen stumbled, catching herself just in time. The air grew denser, suffused with the stench of mold and something sour. "Mom! Look!" Jake whispered, pointing towards an especially grand portrait. The figure in it was a woman with hollow, sunken eyes and a dark smile that chilled Karen's blood. She felt paralyzed under the woman's gaze, trapped between the overwhelming urge to flee and an unsettling curiosity. Those people," she stuttered. "They look like us, Mom. Let us go." Jake pulled at her sleeve, panic rising again as the shadows darkened further around them, but Karen felt drawn, trapped by the woman's smile. The flickering light made the room seem alive, shadows shifting against the wall. Each blink of darkness plucked at her resolve like a string being pulled taut. Without warning, a chilling laughter echoed, concerted, haunting. It bounced off the walls, brushing her skin like a frosty wind. "You think you've escaped?" The voice taunted. It sounded as if it came from the very portraits, rustling their memories as it laughed in disdain. "Run!" she screamed, clutching Jake's hand, dragging him back towards the door. They bolted down the corridor, the laughter growing louder, taunting them as though it fed off their fear, but as they ran, the light faltered again, struggling against an encroaching wave of darkness. The laughter faded, replaced by a low, growling whisper, as if the air itself conspired against them. Come back to us no!" Karen shouted, her voice breaking under the weight of despair. The darkness clawed at their heels, dragging them backward, threatening to pull them into its abyss once more. "Mom!" Jake cried, fear bursting from him as he stumbled, nearly falling. "I can't hold on to me." She pulled him tighter, her heart racing in rhythm with the hammering of her thoughts. She knew they had to outpace what lurked behind them, to resist the pull of the tempting shadows that beckoned to them, and then, just like that, they emerged in another room. This time, the air was still. Barely thrumming with new whispers, but there was no laughter, only a silence that screamed of lost time. What awaited them here? Would they find answers or more terror? Karen inhaled sharply. But before she could gather herself, the whispers intensified, filling the air with desperate pleas that echoed in her mind. "Mom?" Jake whimpered, his small voice struggling against the terror surrounding them. Suddenly, one of the portraits fell, shattering into shards that glinted cruelly in the light. In its reflection, she saw it. The smiling woman, now standing silently behind them. "Do you want to join us?" The words curled around her like smoke, suffocating and sweet. Heart pounding, Karen grabbed Jake's hand tighter, terror flooding her veins. They needed to move, but which way to escape? As she turned back toward the door, another voice emerged from the shadows, this one darker and more guttural. "You can't hide, it's time to choose." The choice lingered like an impending storm, crackling with energy. Would they stand firm against the darkness, or would they succumb? Karen swallowed hard. What choice was even left? Fear clawed at her mind. But every moment counted, something terrible hung in the balance. In that moment, uncertainty pressed against her soul. Were they truly ready to face what lay ahead? What awaited them next? The shadows twisted, pulsing with a sinister heartbeat, echoing in the stillness of the room. Karen's heart raced, thudding painfully against her chest. Mom. Jake's voice trembled next to her. "Stay close," Karen whispered, scanning their surroundings. The air felt thick, almost electric, as if the very essence of despair settled around them, suffocating. The laughter from the portrait still echoed in her mind, teasing the borders of her sanity. She forced herself forward, a protective instinct rising within her. "Where is this place?" Jake's eyes darted nervously, glancing at the painted figures, their hollow eyes still penetrating her thoughts. "I don't know, but we can't let it trap us again," Karen replied, pulling him forward. With each step, the darkness seemed to thrum, reaching for them with invisible hands. She could almost feel the pressure building, a weight of ancient violence and anguish coiling around her. They moved swiftly, feet pounding against the tiled floor as they searched for an exit. An oppressive silence fell over them, only broken by the soft rustle of shadows and the distant echo of one final haunting whisper, "You will join us suddenly." A door appeared ahead, a flicker of hope emerging from the pervasive gloom. With urgency, she grasped the handle and turned it. The door creaked open, revealing a spiral staircase leading upward, faint light spilling down from above. "Mom, is it safe?" Jake's voice quaked as he tugged at her sleeve. "Safe enough," she answered, though uncertainty gnawed at her gut. They climbed the stairs, every step a reminder of the specter's relentless presence pursuing them. As they reached the top, the air shifted again. The room beyond was vast and filled with an otherworldly glow, tinged with ethereal colors swirling amidst the dusty remnants of a once vibrant existence. "This is beautiful," Jake breathed, awe overcoming fear momentarily. "Stay close," Karen instructed, stepping forward. The pulsing shadows danced against the walls, forming shapes that flickered with every determination of her will. "Mom," Jake's voice faltered as he spotted something in the center, a circular mirror, framed in intricate silver. It radiated a warmth, beckoning them closer. Without thinking, Karen stepped forward, her reflection mingling with the shadows still lurking at the edges of her perception. As she gazed, the mirror rippled, revealing fleeting visions of joy and sorrow intertwined with their lives. She saw memories flash: Jake's first steps, his laughter on summer days, and the warmth of her mother's embrace. But then the darkness intruded, faces twisted in anguish, pulling at the corners of her heart. "No! We are stronger than this!" she shouted, as if her voice alone could push back the shadows creeping into her thoughts. "We will not be drawn in." Suddenly, a figure materialized behind her in the mirror once more, the specter. Its soul-chilling laughter filled the air, draping over them like a heavy fog. "You think you can escape your fate? Embrace the darkness instead." "Never." Karen shot back, resolute. Her eyes darted to Jake, who stood trembling beside her, fear woven into his small frame. "Together, we can break this." "Yes. Together." Jake echoed, stepping in front of her, his voice steadying. Karen wrapped her arms around him, grounding themselves in each other's strength. The mirror flickered, distorting their reality. "Look! It's lying!" Jake shouted, pointing. "It wants to take us away." Determined, Karen focused her strength. "We summon our light, our love," she proclaimed, willing every ounce of their shared memories into action. The flickering around the mirror intensified, shadows swirling furiously as they channeled their feelings: love, hope, joy, and even anger at the specter's threat. And then it happened: a blinding light exploded from the connection between mother and son. Karen felt warmth enveloping them like a protective cocoon, pushing the darkness back, the specter's laughter morphing into a growl of fury. The mirror shattered, sending shards of light cascading through the room, illuminating the once shadowed corners. The specter screeched, the oppressive weight of despair lifting as a wave of warmth chased the shadows away. As the last piece of glass fell to the floor, the room brightened. They stood in awe, breathing in the relief of safety. The pounding of darkness transformed, dissipating into echoes of silence. "What just happened?" Jake whispered, his voice filled with wonder. "We broke free," Karen whispered back, tears filling her eyes as she gazed around. The room felt alive, brighter, free of the specter's malevolence, but glancing toward the doorway, she felt a twinge of anxiety. "We need to keep moving. This isn't over yet." Together, they stepped into the light of a new dawn, hearts pounding, hands clasped tightly. They would find a way home, together, ready to confront whatever awaited them on the other side. They would face it all together. Hope ignited inside her as they moved forward. Freedom was theirs to seize, and with every beat of her heart, she knew they would overcome. Now, this is where you come in. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive story. Smash the like button to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this wild conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this epic finale. Your true support makes all the difference in bringing you more captivating tales.